Welcome to the Mountain Dude Podcast, brought to you by Initial Ascent, where we share stories of grit, determination, and the relentless pursuit of growth. This is a space where backcountry hunting meets the deeper lessons of life. Success born from struggle, and the art of carrying heavy loads more comfortably, both physically and metaphorically, through faith and perseverance. Join us as we explore the paths that shape us, celebrate victories big and small, and fuel our journey with hope and tenacity. This is the Mountain Dude Podcast, where we climb higher together.
Can you fix Rodger's face for this, or no?
I got a face for radio. It's like, I don't know what happened to the video on this one. Yeah, it's just straight audio.
Yeah. There's a blur in the back corner.
Oh, you had something on your camera. No, that's just him.
Oh, man. Too funny.
Awesome. Yeah, this one's going to be a blast. I'm excited about it.
I'll try to keep it PG.
Yeah,
best I can.
We joked about putting a swear jar out here, and we talked about if we did that. I said Rodger's going to have to come in and put $100 in that thing to start the show.
I like my tab.
I think, Chase, you should on post edit. You should have a cha-ching, cha-ching every time he says something
instead of a bleep. Just cha-ching.
Yeah, and then on the video you can have like a counter up there.
Yeah,
swear counter.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a real good way to get all of us lunch paid for.
That's right.
That's true. So. Some bond.
So where are we going?
Coffee.
Yeah,
that's exactly right. What is the deal with law enforcement officers? God bless them.
Culture thing,
but
yeah.
It's
the military's the same way.
That's where it stems from, right?
Yeah. There's some science behind it. Rodger might be able to speak to this more. There is literally some science behind like that being I don't know how to describe it, like almost like a coping mechanism.
Really?
Like when something's happening, like the brain, I don't.
And is it relating to the folks that you're
trauma and
chasing?
You're talking about like more of the swearing side.
Yeah, the language thing.
Yeah, so I think a lot of it is if you got some homie with a gun in front of you and it's, sir, please drop the gun, please, where
you need to assert yourself.
I think, anymore, especially nowadays, it puts a little bit more emphasis on the situation and more of this ain't no messing around. If you say drop that effing gun, I'm gonna.
It's like he means business.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, well, I think it's more of that versus.
That's sometimes that's the only thing they understand in our reality.
Yeah, right. That's how they talk to each other. So you got to talk to them like they're used to being talked to. You ain't going to grandma.
No, correct.
And saying something like that. But when you're dealing with a couple of gangbangers at night, rolling in a car together. You talk to them like they're used to being talked to.
Yeah. Well, it's almost a respect thing to them too. Like you can't build rapport and relationships with dope dealers and gangsters if you're talking totally different than them. Like you just can't. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
Like, this guy's doesn't understand where I'm from or anything. So like there is a big part of that.
And does it take some of the edge off of you guys? I mean, if you don't swear and they pick up on that, and they'll say, this dude doesn't have the cojones to shoot me.
100%.
Probably. Yeah, a lot of that. Yeah.
Just psychologically, that's probably what.
Yeah. Did you catch it, Rodger? I said it again, 100%.
Yeah.
Did you notice that?
No, that's...
we need... This is what you have good buddies for. Rodger texted me after the first episode and was like, I got a new drinking game.
Oh, really? Every time you say it?
And now I notice it every time I say it. And you know what's funny? You know where it came from?
Where?
My wife.
Really?
We were sitting down eating dinner the other day, and she was talking to Kai, and she's like, yep, 100%. And I looked at her, I'm like,
that's
the reason. We just started laughing. She's like, you need buddies for that reason. I'm like, yep.
But if you think about that, is anything 100%?
Hey, some things.
I mean...
No.
I'm trying to think of one thing that is 100%. There's always that 1% or half
There's
a percent.
Always a chance, right?
If you look at statistics, they have what's called a p-value. And the p-value, like if it's let's say it's 0.05. And if you have a p-value that's 0.05, that's pretty statistically significant.
Right.
Because
it's your error value kind of thing.
that's saying that 5% of the data that they found is due to chance. So if it's a p-value of 0.01, man, that's only 1%.
So should I start saying 0.01?
I think
It just doesn't have the same ring, does it?
But if you say
more likely than
p-value,
not.
then somebody will think you're urinating somewhere. I mean,
It's true. I'm just doing
quality of urination.
Yeah.
Golly.
It was funny. I just caught onto it, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, he says that a lot." But I do the same thing when I'm listening to my body camera footage or watching it. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I say this
All the
phrase
time.
all the time."
Yeah.
And you don't realize it when you're saying it, but yeah, you.
Oh, once
listen
it's
to
pointed
yourself
out, you realize
Oh,
it.
you realize it. Yeah, 100%.
Like, I'll effing write you up.
I say okay a lot. Be like, "Hey man, you sit down and you're not gonna move, okay?" You know, and then it's. But I do that with my kids a lot too. It's like to get that notice of understanding. It's like you understand what I'm telling you, right? Like it's just that kind of.
How do you go from the way you talk at work
It's the same.
to your kids?
I get my kids saying copy. And I'll tell them something. Copy. You know.
He's not kidding either.
That's awesome.
So they're catching on to it. But.
Well, I want to dive into your background a little bit, but let's start this thing out with a prayer. Joe, do you mind?
No, I'd love to, man. Dear Lord, thanks again for an opportunity to get here together today and just to share stories, share hopes, share dreams. And Lord, we just thank you for the friendships around this table. Bless our conversation today and guide us in everything that we do as men. In your heavenly name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Well, much like me saying 100%, I know I always say, man, I'm so excited for this episode, but I genuinely mean it with this one. I've been looking
You
forward
really
to
mean it now.
Yeah.
100%.
Like extra. This one might actually be 100%.
Okay.
It's not
I think
even
there's a
0.1.
little
What about a
p-value in
110?
there.
Yeah.
110?
110?
0.01.
Yeah.
Oh,
110.
wow.
I
Dang,
like
you went
110.
above and beyond.
It might be 110.
Just like you do
There you go.
everything.
So did you work out this morning?
And
He's still
this
a pump
morning
on.
was mobility. And
So is that a no?
Like he
Got me.
Like he moved. Like he moved from the
word for yoga?
the bed.
No, actually,
He went from the bed to the fridge.
we might as well talk about weaknesses. We've already made fun of my 100%. My weakness is strength and mobility, and a lot of my strength weaknesses are related to my mobility. So
Okay.
I bought this app called GoWOD.
Called what?
GoWOD.
Okay.
And I tested my mobility
means work of the day.
workout of the day.
Work
I'm trying
of
to
the
figure that
day.
one out.
Yes, so this one's
These
mobility
kids and their acronyms
related.
now.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And I tested it, and it's out of 10. My rating for my mobilization is 4.2 out of 10.
Really?
Atrocious. Yeah.
Is it like hips or whole everywhere?
Shoulders and upper
Shoulders.
body,
Oh,
thoracic,
okay.
shoulder.
You gotta
and
like
then
measure how
some
far you can
hips.
reach or something.
Yeah, but there's 10 different measurements that they do, and you can test them throughout it. But I notice it when I'm doing lifts big time, especially since I've gone to CrossFit and do gymnastic movements and then Olympic style lifts. I really notice it.
Yeah.
And so I've committed. I'm changing that. I'm going to make my weakness my strength. So
Good on
30
you,
minutes
man.
every day. So this morning, today's a barbell complex day.
Okay.
Later today because I don't have to work. So this morning was 30 minutes of that, and then devotions and the usual.
Nice.
What do I look better or something?
You look good, man.
Okay, thank you. You asked if I worked
Beard
out
looks
this
like
morning.
it trimmed up a little bit.
Yeah.
Don't know what to
less
trim it?
Amish.
Yeah, a little less.
That's because I just put the hair in a hat. That's the only reason.
Yeah, you showed up to the wedding the other day, man. I think I hadn't seen you with a hat.
Yeah.
Without a hat for
Yeah.
a long time. And
There's a
comes
reason.
and it's just wavy goodness, man. It was
Like
I was
he had
impressed.
some shine in it too. Like he had some
There was
some
product.
glistening in it.
There was
yeah.
product present.
That's no product.
Some oil. No?
That's
That's
no
just
problem.
all
That's natural oil.
That's a blow dryer when I get out of the shower.
really mine goes.
Yeah. Mine's sometimes I'll use a frizz cream, but Yeah, it's definitely
had no
curly.
Did you just say sometimes you use a what?
a frizz cream? Like if I
And that's recorded.
That's
That's going to come back and haunt you
Yes,
like
it is.
nobody's
Frizz cream.
business, man.
Yeah, baby.
That's all right. Hey, gotta embrace it.
you know what? I'm just sitting over here because I'm jealous.
That's
Yeah.
You know.
Hey,
Yeah, you
I don't get to
that
use
cream
product.
might help your head at some point. It might bring some hair back.
Well, I don't want that.
to bring
now.
that
I'm
in.
past the point of no return.
See,
Fair
he's got
enough.
one of them heads, though, that looks good shape.
It's true. We talked about this.
I've
at
had
one
to
point.
embrace it.
It's like
Yeah.
You have
Bruce
to.
Willis.
There you go.
You know, I brought up you just being able to strain real hard and grow that mustache back.
Yeah.
Rodger's tenfold that. Like
Nah, dude.
only the mustache
Last
though,
time I
not
shaved
his
that
beard.
mustache was that elk hunt.
Yeah,
And we took those pictures and thought it was a good idea.
I don't remember this.
My 5-year anniversary. I've had a mustache
I do
forever
remember now.
My wife hates it.
Yeah,
Thought she hated it. She always said she didn't like it.
Until you
Only.
shave it off.
Yeah, so for my 5-year anniversary, I was like, I'm going to do something that she doesn't like, and so I shaved it off. And I'm standing there, clothed, when she walks in the door, and she looks at me and goes, "Why did you do that?" I don't know now. I figured that was a different response than I was expecting, but yeah.
Oh, that's
And
hilarious.
then it was too close to the pictures to grow it back because it just look bad. So
Yep, that's right. That
so
is
the
right.
only our law enforcement yearbook thing that they've done over the last 8 years or whatever is the only picture of me at the police department without a mustache on.
No
It's
kidding.
It'll probably be the last one.
yeah,
too.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about your backstory, Rodger. Give me kind of a condensed version because I know you could go on for hours about it.
Well, grew up in the mountains of Northern California on a cattle ranch. We moved up there. My grandparents bought this ranch, I think in 91. We moved up there in 92, right after so from second grade on, I was up there. Man, I don't know where you start. We grew up shooting everything we could. It was before the internet. I know it's shocking for some people. There was a life before the internet. So, we didn't realize there were seasons on a lot of stuff and, methods of take on stuff. So we shot everything we could, me and my brother. We used to get paid a nickel for every bird we shot on the ranch because they would defecate on my grandpa's equipment and everything. So we shot everything we could. And then I kind of went into small game and big game. I started archery hunting when I was 14. Got a bow when I was 13. But Dad wouldn't let me hunt with it until I could hit a pipe plate at 40. So I ended up actually, when he first bought it for me, he got it from a place called Predator Archery down in kind of Central California. But it was just the bare bow and some arrows. And they were old aluminum arrows. And I didn't have sights. I didn't have anything. I had a rest and a bow and some arrows. And I couldn't wait, so I started shooting stuff with just my fingers and open sights and no sights and shooting quail and stuff on the ground and ruined a lot of arrows. Aluminum arrows, I know this is another thing for you young guys. Aluminum arrows don't do very well when they hit the ground. So they don't fly very straight after that. But
They were expensive back then too.
Man, they were
I mean,
big.
these ones I
too.
had, I can't remember the brand of them, but they had a ridge, like a
like a spine.
Yeah,
Or-
they had a spine, so they had, I guess, grooves more so on, I think, 3 or 4 sides to add for some stiffness. They weren't like just the old double I-75s
Yeah.
and stuff. Yeah, I can't even remember
Never
the
heard
brand
of
of them, but I had a bunch of those, and I remember those. And yeah, anyway, so archery hunted growing up, and that's almost exclusively what I did for a long time.
How old were you when you killed your first big game animal with a bow?
14,
14.
Yeah.
And what was that?
a buck.
Okay.
I went out opening day. Dad didn't go with me. It's like, hey, I'm going to go out opening day by myself, just on the ranch. But it was, halfway through the morning, saw this buck stand up. I don't even remember. It didn't have rangefinders too then. So I just guessed, shot, double lung perfect, watched him die. super excited. A 14-year-old kid just shot my first buck with a bow. First day archery hunting.
This
I was like, man,
is
this is easy.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd take the 4-wheeler back to the house. I'm like, Dad, I shot one. He's like, no way, kind of thing. And no, sure enough, he came up and we took care of it and everything. But yeah, 14, and I didn't kill another one for a while. That was harder than I thought. Did a lot of shooting and missing, doing a lot of shooting and wounding, unfortunately, with that kind of archery equipment back there at the time. I didn't know a whole lot either about archery. We didn't have an archery shop up there, so it was just kind of you didn't know what tuning was. You just slapped some stuff together, and everything on the broadheads say field tip accurate. So I was like, cool, screw them on and let it rip without trying. And I missed a buck one time, 3 shots on a water hole, same over his back, over his back, over his back. I'm like, what the heck? I know this is the yardage. Well, I didn't broadhead tune or nothing. I just threw these broadheads on, old NAP Thunderheads, and let them fly. And before the information age and stuff, so it's nice to look back now and go, that's why I missed that buck. But
do you think that's what sparked? Because for the listeners that don't know, I know Dennis and Joe do. Like this is the guy in the shop when you need something tuned on your bow or your rifle. Like Rodger's the guy that gets the call. 100%. Do you think that's what sparked this passion and desire for that?
I still didn't get into it that much until I went to college. I played college baseball in the Sacramento Valley for a few years, and then still didn't really start for that kind of stuff until I went down to Southern California and went to college down there to get my bachelor's degree. I started working at Bass Pro Shops in the archery department. And there was a guy, Garrett Trafus, that still to this day is probably one of the best bow techs that I know, and he taught me almost everything I know about that kind of stuff. And it, much to Bass Pro Shop's dismay, because we were a really good archery department, and we wouldn't nickel and dime guys, and so guys would come in and be like, hey, I got this wrong, and so we'd kind of on the house tinker with stuff. I mean, we had guys that were driving from hours away to come and do stuff, and it was nice because we were kind of tucked in the corner and kind of out of sight, out of mind for a lot of the hunting managers and stuff, and so we did a lot of stuff, probably a lot of stuff we shouldn't have done to some people's bows, but yeah, it was fun. But got into that and a lot of self-taught stuff, just trial and error for archery side of things. YouTube's a good way to learn a lot of stuff nowadays. There's some reputable sources that you can watch and stuff.
Oh, absolutely. And then after the archery, or after working in the archery shop, that's when you get into law enforcement?
Yeah, I worked some odds and ends jobs trying to get into law enforcement. That was around 2008 when the market crashed, and we had places weren't hiring because the money wasn't there. I was having a hard time getting in, just people weren't hiring, so I ended up self-sponsoring myself through the California Fish and Game Academy. It's a 30-week, for people up here in Idaho, that's a long time, because what the Idaho Post is 16 weeks, I think, something like that.
I can't even remember now, but it's and that seems short. Like forever.
Right, yeah. And guys are like, oh my gosh, I got to go to this academy. I'm like, dude, mine was twice as long as that. Yeah. Which was fun. It was nice, especially being a hunter. I really wanted to do the fish and game side of stuff, but it was cool. We did 23 weeks of regular law enforcement stuff, and then 7 weeks of just specific fish and game stuff. We had some amazing instructors on both sides of everything, but the fish and game guys were spun on. I'll say this about California Fish and Game: they got some guys that are real spun up, and that was actually when that show came out, Wild Justice. I don't know if anybody's ever seen that show, Wild Justice, but they were doing that to try to get recruitment because they couldn't hire enough game wardens. So we had, I think, half of our class were self-sponsored and the other half were sponsored cadets, and so they did that show to try to kind of raise awareness and everything to fish and game. But it was fun. We got to drive boats, did EVOC, emergency vehicle operations stuff in boats, which was really cool. We did necropsy stuff. Everything. It was a super cool experience, but self-sponsored myself through it. I wasn't hired. So after the academy, I just threw applications out anywhere I could, and Stockton hired me, and that's where that whole law enforcement stuff started. But I started doing
Stockton PD, right?
Yeah, in Central California.
Yeah.
I started kind of getting into guns before that. Started doing some handgun competitions and stuff. I had a buddy, his dad was a Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputy. He was a narc down there. We shot a lot of competitions together down there, and then that kind of continued when I got into law enforcement. But that's kind of where the gun stuff started. I still didn't even really do rifle stuff until after law enforcement. I was still kind of strictly archery stuff, but it was...
I did not know that about the fish and game.
Yeah.
Your past.
It was a lot of fun. I mean, I still look back on it. I still got a lot of good buddies that from that academy class. And the problem, though, I think, as much as they have some guys that are super spun up in that agency, I want to say there was probably 8 or 9 guys that were sponsor cadets that were hired already by the Fish and Game to be wardens that had never hunted or fished before.
Jeez. That's a problem.
And,
That's a problem.
It's a huge problem, right? And I got it just because, like I said, where I grew up, right, we'd shoot everything. We didn't know there were seasons on stuff. Like, if Dad didn't say, I mean, you did your hunter safety when you were super young, so you didn't remember anything, right? And you couldn't just look regs up on the internet, so if, you weren't told that it was wrong, you didn't know any better. So I kind of got the stigma as the class poacher, and everybody used to give a shit. This one guy, Buddy Allen, I'm still friends with him to this day. Every time they would talk about something illegal in class, he'd Holscher. Class, everybody would laugh. But I would say that having those experiences would have made me a better game warden, just because I know, and people look at some of these regulations and they go, well, that's not that hard to abide by. But, man, when you're out there, it's really hard not to break a fish and game code violation.
There's so many of them.
Guys, if they keep their tags in their backpack and then they drop their backpack and then they go on a stalk or something, well, technically you're hunting without a license or hunting without a tag on you and everything, or in Idaho, when you got to immediately upon kill notch your tag and tag the buck. Like, how many 13, 14-year-old kids are going to kill their first deer and then not go up and start, oh my gosh, look at this. Well, technically, it's against the law. So I had the problem was those guys not having those experiences, and that same guy Allen that was giving me a bunch of crap in the academy, he was on field training. I'm trying.
We're hungry, Rodger.
I'm still 0 on the swear jar.
You are,
right?
I'm
trying to know, man. He was on field training up near where I grew up, and I was out of the academy and helping Dad on the ranch, and he was like, hey, I got a week off, between phases. Can I come over and hang out? I was like, sure, man. So I took him hunting and fishing for his first time, and he was already a game warden.
Man, that's crazy.
And
for his first time.
First time.
Wild.
And teach this guy how to cast. We're on a little stretch of the Hat Creek, which is, it's a creek, so it's 15, 20 feet wide, so you're not really casting. You're just kind of flipping, I'd flip it upstream and let it roll down and then bring it in. A little 1/16th Panther Martin or Rooster Tail or something, just nice and easy on a little 6-foot ugly stick. And it got to the point where he couldn't get that there was a log across the river or the creek. I was like, just stand on that and put your pole upstream and let that Panther Martin roll down underneath the log, because you could see the fish, and he does that for a couple of minutes and catches his first fish, and it is just super excited, man, just like a kid, super excited about it. And then 5 minutes later, he's like, hey, man, you got your keys for your truck? And I was like, yeah, here, man. What'd you forget? And he's like, oh, I forgot my fishing license in your truck. And I was like, oh, no way. Poacher, you got to cite yourself, and everything. And we had a long talk about, like, hey, without that experience, if you go to contact somebody that's fishing, he was like, oh, man, I forgot my wallet in the truck. It's in my wallet. Without that experience that you just had, you would go, yeah, right, here's your ticket, versus I've been there, I understand. Yeah, that's possible. Let's walk to your truck and let's go get your stuff.
It's a big difference.
It's huge. It gives you perspective on things.
Exactly.
And so I saw that as a big problem with that agency, and I think, and just talking to some of the guys while I was in that academy, a lot of them were wanting to be biologists, but they weren't hiring biologists, so that was the next best thing. And I was like, man, you're a cop first. And,
absolutely.
Right.
And so some of these guys just didn't have the warrior mentality to be a cop, and a lot of those guys have since rotated out of that agency to something else, which, like, man, that should be one of those first things that gets you booted out of that. But
Go back to just real quick
Yeah.
for the older generation of the audience,
yeah,
like myself. You talked about guys being spun up. Explain what you meant by that. Some of these guys being spun up.
Some super hardcore guys. You could probably still go back and watch some of those episodes, but there's a Gabe Morden. He was out of the Red Bluff area. Brian Boyd. Like, this dude was hardcore. He would go sit on, basically camp out under the stars to catch poachers. I mean, he would do some amazing stuff, and they have a lot of their MET team, they call it, the marijuana enforcement team.
Oh, yeah.
And so they're going in and they're doing raids on these marijuana grows on public land and stuff, and these guys that they're going after aren't your marijuana shop owners. I mean, these are hardcore cartel guys that are armed and got booby traps everywhere. And he was a canine handler, and his dog Phoebe, she was a Belgian Malinois, and let's say she had over 300 deployments, like bites, in these grows. Sometimes she would get multiple 2 or 3
That's
bites
wild.
during a grow. He'd send her, and she was so just turned on that she'd be quiet all the way in, wouldn't bark, which I have a Belgian Malinois. To get them to not bark is a chore. And he'd take that dog in there, and they're basically ambushing these guys and trying to catch them, not just run them out of there. And so they're trying to catch all these guys. And there's one guy, Lieutenant John Norris. He's retired now, but he writes a book. It's one of the only books I've ever read. I've only read 2 books, and that's one of them. I'm not
the other one?
reader.
Just real quick.
Yeah, the other one is, while I was in the academy, I read it. It's called On Combat by retired Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman. It's the psychology of deadly force encounters and stuff like that. So figured that would be a good one to read.
So
Some light reading.
Light reading.
Just making sure it wasn't.
It's actually helped me out
War and Peace or
quite a bit.
something like
But
that.
I don't read much. But John Norris's book, he has one that's called, that one was called War in the Woods. And he's got another one out that I've listened to audiobook now that we have audiobooks. Yes, I can listen to. But those guys, I mean, they get in shootings all the time, those fish and game wardens. And a lot of my instructors during that academy a lot of them were MET team members that were in his book. He uses code words for them, but knowing the instructors, I knew who he was talking about. I mean, there's one, Kyle Kroll. He was another canine handler, game warden out of I think Sierra County. Anyway, he got shot in the leg with an AK round. Went through both of his legs, and they were pinned down in this marijuana grow for hours until National Guard could bring a helicopter in and everything. I mean, but he's got some cool stories in there. But that's what I mean by spun up. I mean, these guys weren't your
they're immersed.
Hey, sir, can I see your fishing license
Right.
kind of guys? I mean, they were going out and just hearing some of their stories, which was kind of the cool thing is they're hunting the hunters, or fishermen or whatever, I guess.
Yeah.
But you hear stories about those guys getting in waders and basically sneaking out to guys' duck blinds and sitting there amongst them, and they don't know.
Wow.
And hearing them talk and watching them, mud stump them or ganser or something, and like just hearing these stories, you're like, holy cow! Like it is kind of the ultimate hunt.
We had something like
something
that happen to us once. I was up with a buddy in the mountain.
Yeah.
That 2-mile trail up there, and these old cowboys showed up, pulling their horse trailer up that road. And it's a horrible 2-mile road to get up there. It's like if you're going to take a horse trailer up there, you're really trying
That's
hard to get up
dedicated,
there.
yeah.
It's dedicated. And we were up there, had camp set up for an elk hunt, and these old boys showed up, get their horses out, tie them up just like you would expect, BSing with us, talking to us about the hunt and how things are going. And Jeff had a deer up hanging and on and on and on. Probably spent 30 minutes talking to us. And then, boom, flashed it, fish and game.
Yep.
So then they started going through everything, put the horses back in the trailer and took back off.
Yeah, a lot of those guys will do that. And that was kind of the nice thing is you could go undercover and basically go hunt and then run into people like that. But I did some ride-alongs with them, and man, it was so much fun. Like we were sitting on the bank of the Sacramento River outside of Redding, and we're watching these fishermen catching fish in the Sacramento River and watching where they put them. Checking for over limits and seeing if they were going to stash something in a boat. And you're watching these guys, and they have no idea that you're above them, watching them for hours. And then pretty soon you're like, oh, he just put one in this, kind of a weird compartment in his boat. And so, then they start making their way back to the boat ramp. So we have to haul butt back to the truck and drive around over there. And then guy contacts him, and he talks to him like they have no idea that we were watching them. And so it's just kind of the whole, like you used to do with the dope stuff. Like, you see if they're honest. And, and then pretty soon it's like, well, what about the one that you put there? What? Kind of a thing. So it was cool. And it would have been a fun job. But
well, what you're talking about with all of these scenarios are like the hunters. You're talking about the guys that aren't trying to jam up you guys that aren't doing anything wrong. Yeah. Like that's not a lot of people that become cops or fish and game officers that do really well. Yeah. They're not there to stop the guys that are doing things right. They're there to hold the ones that aren't accountable so that it doesn't affect all of us. It's the same thing in law enforcement that way. And
unfortunately, I think with that War in the Woods, or not the War in the Woods, the Wild Justice show, it shined a terrible light on bear hunters. They did a lot of episodes on hound hunters and the gallbladders, because there's a big market for black market for gallbladders. And so, I mean, that's one of the only crimes in the Fish and Game book that is, if you possess more than one gallbladder, it's prima facie evidence that you're possessing it for sales. And so we used to tell guys that as soon as you killed your bear, grab the gallbladder and pop it. So there's just no question that, it's the Asian community uses them as like a medicinal thing and kind of thing. So their bears are poached a lot just for their gallbladders. Well, they shined a bad light on bear hunting and hounds specifically, because that's a really good way to bear hunt is hounds. And so shortly after that, they outlawed hound hunting in California. And I think it's because it got a bad rap because it was in the limelight with that show. So
makes sense. How long were you a cop in California?
A little over 6 years.
Okay. And you meet your wife?
Yeah, I met my wife there. The plan was never to stay there. The plan was always to get my year and a half done, get my post certificate, and then go to an agency. Because once you have that, you're now a lateral, and a lot of places will hire you after that because you're cheap, right? You've been through the academy, you've done your training, you've shown that you could be a cop on the street, and it's easy to hire you. Well, I met my wife like 6 months in, and that kind of put the pause on leaving the agency. She was a dispatcher for him, and the whole typical cop-dispatcher relationship thing. So,
thought that was supposed to stay professional.
It started off that way.
Always starts off that way.
It always does, but no, it's been a huge blessing for me, honestly, and not something that I ever saw. You gotta something in your mind as far as your path and what you want to do and how things go, and God's got another plan for you, and that's what it was there. Like I never was thinking I was going to stay down there that long and was just going to do my time and bounce, but it happened.
And everything happens for a reason. That plan was perfect. Look at where you're at now.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's really what drove me up here. Is Stockton went through bankruptcy as a city right when I got hired, so they were going through that bankruptcy court stuff throughout my time there, and there was a point where the federal judge said, hey, we're going to take your guys' retirement to pay City of Stockton's debts. And I was like, oh, so a bunch of us were like looking at different places. And I guess rewind a little bit, a buddy of mine, Justin, I played baseball with him and went to college with him. Well, him and his wife moved up here right after the academy. We went through the academy together and roomed together. He went through the regular police academy, and I went through the Fish and Game academy. Well, he moved up here right after the academy, and then had always wanted me to come up and kind of check it out, and it just never was in a spot for it, right? And so when they started looking at taking our retirement, my wife was like, well, maybe we ought to look at going somewhere else.
Right.
And then, so that was like probably 2016. I came up and hunted as a non-resident up here, and it was the first time I'd ever been in Idaho, and I loved it. And so it was kind of like, oh, maybe we should look at Idaho instead of just somewhere else in California. And then I came up and did some ride-alongs with them, and just fell in love with it. And 6 months later, I was living up here. So
you moved up here before transferring from California to Idaho was cool.
Yeah,
Yes.
I got in here when the getting was good.
Right.
Yeah.
So you kind of slid in under the
slid
radar.
in, yeah.
Nobody.
Yeah, I can almost be considered a local.
Yeah.
now.
Pretty close.
I think you are.
Well,
yeah.
Rodger kind of sparked a whole movement of cops coming up here from not just that department, but in California in general.
Yeah, when
We
I started up
seeing-
here, it was like unheard of. Like I was the only lateral and stuff. There was a couple other guys that were in some other agencies, but like for my agency, it was
rare.
yeah.
So
And
did you
then
go
we've
straight to
since-
Nampa when you got here, as far as PD?
Yeah. I quit on a Friday up there and got hired here on a Monday.
Yeah.
So it was just like, hurry up, drive up, and move all your stuff up. But
Napa's a little different from Stockton.
a little bit.
Yeah, Stockton's pretty rough. Can be.
Yeah, there were some rough times.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, and they always used to say you do a year down there, it's like 5 years somewhere else, just the experience you get, just with
Yeah.
Oh,
everything,
wow.
the call load and whatnot. So, yeah, it gives you a different perspective. Like, when guys hear, like, oh, man, we're super busy, I'm like, not really.
Not
But,
really.
Yeah, so.
Another
it's-
world.
Yeah, we do stay super busy here, but it's a different kind of busy. I mean, we didn't handle low-level calls down there. It was like shooting, stabbings, domestics in progress stuff. Like, that was almost all we handled because we didn't have the manpower to, especially when I got hired and there was a mass exodus of cops because they went through bankruptcy, so that we lost 100 guys like that. Wow. And so a city the size of Boise to, I think when I got hired, there was 78 homicides that year. Say the same size as Boise. Boise might have 5 a year.
Yep.
So, and almost half the cops to
Wow.
handle that
Yeah.
stuff. I mean, it was just shooting to shooting to shooting to shooting. And so,
Wild.
yeah.
So you come up here, start hunting. Is that what kind of transitions? Do you rifle hunting more? Because you archery hunted in California mainly, right?
Yeah, almost exclusively. I started getting into a buddy of mine, another Chris, worked for the sheriff's department down there, and he was a SWAT sniper. And he's the one that kind of got me into the long-range shooting, rifle shooting stuff. And then, I really dove into it when I got here. The reloading, I started a little bit of reloading when I was down there and the long-range stuff, but just tip of the iceberg kind of stuff, nothing super in-depth. And then, when I moved up here, that was when it's like, all right, these canyons are big, this country's big, I need to be able to shoot further than I used to be able to, just to increase my odds of success. So it was kind of almost out of necessity, and it's a lot of fun, so it was kind of a twofold thing, but that's what really got me into it, was moving up here. I don't know if I would have gotten into it. It's just, we have access to that stuff here.
Right.
You talk to guys that are back east, and they're like, oh man, the only range that we have within 100 miles is only 200-yard range. That makes it hard to do long-range shooting stuff. But here, I mean, now I live 9.5 miles from a range that got 1,300-yard capabilities. So, and just BLM nearby, I mean, you have so much access. We have access here to do that kind of stuff that some people just don't. And it was like that in California, too. We really didn't have... There was one range that was probably 45 minutes away that you could get to 1,000, but it was a members only kind of thing. Like, it was hard to get into. We had a rock quarry that we shot at a lot, but you'd have to, it was an all day thing. You'd have to take all your steel out there, put it in the ground, and so it just never something I did a whole lot until I moved up here. But, yeah, and then kind of the necessity of trying to get more accurate performance was getting into building my own guns and ammo and stuff like that, and really getting down into the weeds and that kind of stuff is what got me into it here. But yeah, I met you shortly after
Yeah. It would have been...
got hired.
You were... I didn't know if you were here a year. Were you?
6 months
6 months.
So how
And then we
did you
met.
guys meet? Law enforcement?
in the jail.
The jail.
Yeah.
Okay.
You stuffed and cuffed somebody and went up there and handed them off to Chris?
I don't know how you heard about
We started talking about bear hunting randomly. That is kind of a funny story. So yeah, he brings somebody to jail. I worked in the jail at that point, and I might have been talking to Jordan, to be honest, about my upcoming bear hunt, which is another buddy of ours.
And I might have overheard.
I think you overheard it. Showed me some photos of a bear he just killed, and then we hooked up on. I actually traded numbers and started talking. And pretty soon, I think Rodger was like, "Why don't we let's go hunt together?" Because we were both hunting.
Yeah,
solo
we were
at that
showing.
point.
I was like, "Oh, this is where I shot that bear." I was showing you pins or whatever, and you're like, "I was just like 500 yards from there, and we're going to go back into that." So we kind of knew the same area that we were going or wanting to go. And
how long ago was this?
2019.
19. Okay.
Yeah, and there was. I killed mine in April, so I probably met you in May.
Yeah, because I think I had just gone out like that weekend before, right where you'd killed your bear practically.
Yeah, and then I was cussing my pack that I had at the time, and you were like, "Hey, you ever heard of Initial Ascent?" And I was like, at the time I hadn't, and so you brought your pack over and tried it on, sold mine the next day.
Literally, sold yours the next day. Yeah. You had it on that first. So the first hunt we ever did together was a spring bear hunt for me.
No kidding.
And we did, it was like 4 nights, 5 days, something like that was the plan. Killed my bear night 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First hunt we did together was a bear hunt.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Killed that bear night 1, and then...
I was trying to videotape him, too.
That's right. There's probably some
I got to find that. Yeah, you got to get me that.
I have that. I should have brought that SD card.
How easy was that with your flip phone?
So we were talking about tripods earlier. Like the tripod that he had for that Sony Handycam was just atrocious. The tripod that I had to
y'all had the Handycam out.
Yes.
Oh man.
Yep.
And I'm trying to follow him carrying this camera up and down the hill, and we're running. So we ended up going down. We got to the top of that knob probably midday. Didn't have a whole lot of water. And we were fixing on staying up there, and so he's like, "Oh, I'll go down and get water." So what would you have, 12 liters of water
Probably.
or something like
for
that?
both of us.
He dove off of this hill down to the creek, got all this water, came all the way back up to the top, and midday I just happened to be glassing and saw this bear crossing this hillside, and I was like, "Bear, bear, bear!" And where? And by the time that he got around to getting on the glass, it had already dumped over the side of this hill.
This is probably a mile.
Oh, it was easy.
Yeah, long ways away.
As a crow flies, yeah.
Wrong ridge, too.
way wrong ridge. And so he just trusted me. He was like, "Hey, was it a good bear?" And I was like, "Dude, I don't know. Hard to tell in tens at a mile, I was like, it was a blonde bear going this way, dumped over, showed him where I was at, and like, hey, bird in the hand, And so he dumped out all that water that he just went down and got.
Every bit of it.
Just so like, no.
Oh, man.
And we bailed off of that thing, and basically he ran, and I huffed and puffed and tried to follow with this camera. Just, Tard Fury moments. Just not happy with because that was the hardest hunt that I'd ever done, especially to that point, and I was just smoked. Nutrition was bad. I was not hydrating. Running June, it was hot. It was
everything working against you.
Yeah, way hardcore. So we ended up dumping packs and just going up with the rifle and the camera up this draw. And he shoots this bear. It was like 7 something with my rifle.
Some change.
Yeah, off of this tripod that was just totally not meant for that. It was an old Vortex Ridgeline or something.
I think so. Yeah, like their base, but it might have been a high country, that super lightweight.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they did not design that thing to shoot off of. Heck
no.
Let alone Rodger like rifles.
Yeah, and I didn't have an arca rail on it. There was no arca head. I mean, he was literally like just setting the rifle on that tripod and trying to steady it at this nasty uphill angle. Like it was. I got the kill shot on film, which was surprising.
I was super
surprised.
I did.
He
killed that bear.
Shoots this bear.
Wow.
And then it was so far up there, and we were just smoked that we waited until the next morning. It was almost dark anyway. We waited till the next morning to go up there. But you almost stepped on 3 rattlesnakes on the way up to there. And
that's when I really figured out Rodger could shoot, too. He was shooting the heads off these rattlesnakes with his handgun walking up there.
Kidding.
Yeah.
There were he was probably 2 inches from stepping on one on the way down. And I didn't even have the energy at that point to shoot that one. We let that one live. But there was,
I think I know where you guys were at, kind of.
You probably do.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you probably do.
And it was pretty intense to go up there. And I think I did pass out on the way down, or on the way back when I got back to the tent. I was pretty smoked, and I ended up having...
He wasn't doing very well.
I had to lay down, was dry heaving and stuff. Probably had some little heat exhaustion going, a little out of shapeness, but...
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. You shooting heads off of rattlesnakes like that.
Done it a couple times. We went
a lot of times.
Really?
We were on another bear hunt, and he wanted to go through a den.
No. I wanted to stay on the road. You were like, "Oh, let's just cut through here. It'll be shorter to go up there."
This is pretty typical. I am notorious.
And I was
for this.
like, I was like, and we don't get 20 yards into these rocks. Rattlesnakes, and he freezes. And I grew up around snakes, and I used to catch them. I don't mind them.
Oh,
so,
I hate them.
Yeah.
I hate them.
So I was walking through there, shooting our way out of this.
I think he shot like 7 of them. Like, I'm not exaggerating.
So what pistol were you?
It's a Glock 19.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And is this like your service?
No, it's just one that
something like that.
It's very similar to. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember I took my family out, and we were in side by side, and had all of them with me, and we're driving down this trail, and I had gotten this little 380 pistol. I won't even say what brand it was, because it doesn't matter.
Point.
There was a huge rattlesnake for around here. Now, not anything like I grew up with, but there was a huge rattlesnake crossing the road in front of us, going ever so slow. So I'm like, I'm the protector of my family.
Here we go.
I will take care of this. So my side-by-side had a little half window. I went up with it. Never fear, family. I'm here. So I pulled out my little 380 pistol. He's crawling again ever so slowly across. And, I mean, can't be 5 feet from the end of my barrel. Bam, 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 bam. He's still crawling. I'm out. And I said, y'all don't get out.
Just drive over.
Trey's like, I don't know, 8 or something like that. Dad, you didn't hit the snake.
Thanks, son.
Appreciate it.
Oh man,
just let him go. He's going to be out of the way in a little bit.
Yeah.
I think I know exactly what 380 you have, because that trigger pulls like that far on it.
Oh yeah,
12 pounds.
I don't think I came within 5 inches of that dude's head.
Smokes.
And after the first couple shots where I figured out I couldn't hit his head, I'm just aiming for whatever body mass that I could find.
Yeah.
Not even
That's
close,
hilarious.
man.
Yeah, I've seen Rodger do that a lot. He's asked me to go back in there to
just
do
to
that
shoot
again.
squirrels,
or just shoot snakes again. I'm like, I ain't ever going back in there again. You put a 22-inch bear in there, and I ain't going in there. Like, no thanks.
The first time I ever went into the country close to where y'all are talking about, I went in there back in 2000. I had just moved here, and I had a dairy client that they go and bear hunt this place, every spring. Mm-hmm. Well, it was like late June, early July, and he said, let's go ride the horses in there, and I'll show you some country and whatnot. So we took horses in there. I had my wife with me, and we ran into no less than 7 or 8 rattlesnakes on that deal. Horses were the ones that would let you know.
Yep.
I mean,
for sure.
That bay horse that I had, that sucker, he'd throw his ears back, and just kind of start stomping like that. And I'm like, oh, another snake. Those dudes, there were 2 of them, father and son. No, 3 of them actually. Another son. They would bail off their horses and find a little forked stick or something, and make that rattlesnake uncoil and pin his head down. One of them would grab the body of the snake. The other one would take a Leatherman and grab the head. And then they would get the snake up, and they would turn it over and slit right here in kind of just right below the jaw in the throat area. they would make a slit right there, reach in with the Leatherman, and twist, just break the neck, kill the snake, and then in 5 minutes they had it skinned out and rolled up and put in the saddlebags.
No kidding.
Yeah, we ended up with 7 snake skins by the time we were done. My wife was some kind of freaked out. She's like,
imagine.
Are all your dairy clients like this?
And that girl's from the south, so she's seen some snakes.
Let's clarify something. She's from the south, but she was in the city limits.
Okay.
You know, so she hadn't been out much. Definitely around snakes. Now it's kind of old hat to her.
Yeah.
She doesn't like snakes, but you know, as long as she can see them.
Well, I would take a bunch of snakes over ticks.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm kind of with you on that, man.
No.
Because I mean, the snakes you can see them. Ticks.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see them, but it's too late.
Yeah.
Well,
right.
you do the same thing with a snake.
Yeah, I mean, those rattlesnake
true.
curl up in that sage. You're not seeing them.
Yeah. Well, a little technical difficulties, but Chase worked his magic and resolved them. So we'll get back on track.
Made you look even
Magic
better,
man.
man.
Yeah.
You got the filter on that camera?
Yeah. Photoshop. How's the Photoshop working? Well, something I want the audience to get out of this, not just story time and all the fun, which I love that, but Rodger is one of the most proficient shooters I've ever met in my life in hunting scenarios. He has genuinely made me a better hunter because of it. Now, plug your ears while I say this stuff too. No, like truly someone that's really challenged me that way, and it's made a huge difference. And a big part of it's his knowledge, but I want to kind of get into what you do to be that way, because that proficiency comes from a lot of time, right?
Yeah. A lot of it's just time behind the gun. Like I said earlier, it's just fortunate that I live so close to the Parma range and can go out there and shoot a lot. You can do a lot of things without pressing the trigger, but it's still
Like dry fire? Is that what you're... Okay.
I mean, obviously we were talking earlier about your bear shot in that wind. That's where rubber meets the road on a lot of that long range stuff, is your wind calls. And you could really only get that shooting in the wind and time, you know. And, you can get things, you know, wind meters and stuff like that help you judge the wind at your location, but that's just one part of it, you know. So reading the wind, spending a lot of time out there, like we were talking earlier, I spend a lot of my time while I'm glassing getting wind calls,
constantly.
Which it probably keeps me from seeing some animals, but at least I know that if I do see one at that distance, I already have like a wind call built in, and I can kind of see what the wind's doing throughout the day and trying to kind of find those changes throughout the day, and kind of geek out on that stuff, which is why I like shooting rocks a lot out there. He always is like, no, you're not going to shoot a rock. I'm like, oh man, there's one out there at 780 yards. Look, it's got that little brown spot on it. It's a white rock. Like, it'd be perfect to shoot at. But, so yeah, that's shooting in the wind a lot is going to help you, obviously. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you could do, dry fire for your building your positions and trigger presses and stuff like that can help you along the way, because you can have a great wind call, but if you have a poor trigger press, it's going to appear on target that you had a bad wind call. Well, you might have had a good wind call, but it was just you had a bad trigger press, or your natural point of aim was off, your position wasn't stable, you know, different things like that. So,
well, something that I constantly see you do when you're talking about, it's all the time when you're glassing, like you're constantly getting wind calls, but it's not just for the ridge that we're on.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, it's more so because, like I said, I'll sit there with my wind meter and I can, you know, get a direction of a vector and intensity for the wind where we're at. But then, I mean, we're in some of these big canyons that have multiple little draws that come down into it, so you're getting different winds doing different things, and wind will flow through a canyon like water, so you can kind of sit there and judge. And I'm looking at vegetation, looking at mirage, seeing, you know, what the wind's doing on these different areas, so I kind of have a source to base a wind call off of if something popped out and it was like, hey Chris, get on the gun here, hold here, you know, kind of a thing. So a lot of those things happen. I mean, how much time do we have to sit there and do that once something presents itself? And especially those spring bear hunts, it's like, there he is right now, hurry, we got to take a shot or he's going to disappear, kind of a thing. So,
Right.
Yeah, that's just being mindful of that. And you can read mirage. It helps to have a spotting scope, or you can do it through your rifle scope too. Zoom in, the higher magnification you have, the more the mirage will show, which is another trick. If you got a lot of mirage, if it's a hot day and you got a lot of mirage, back off of your power and there won't be as much. But you can change the focus on your rifle scope or your spotter or even your binos, you could see it too, and change the focal point, in and out away from you, and you'll get different mirage as you're looking through that stuff. So you could see whether the mirage is boiling straight up or if it's going left or right, things like that. So that'll give you a pretty decent basis for a wind call, along with the vegetation and knowing kind of the natural flow of how the thermals are going to go and different things like that. And
so when you're reading wind, right, and are you plugging it into something to say, okay, this is going to dictate MOAs, or do you have a formula that you use?
You can. I can do it on my Kestrel, or I could do it on the apps on my phone. But you just probably talk about your gun number. So you could do this easily, whether you're shooting MOA or mills. It's a little bit easier for mills. So for a mills, for that rifle over there, what I'll do is I have that profile built in whether it's a Hornady 4-off or any of these other shooting applications that you got on your phone. You can plug in all your data for your bullet and cartridge and everything, and then take off. You got to take off your spin drift. Or on the Hornady 4-off app, there's a spot on the range card where it's got your wind drift, and it doesn't take into account spin drift or all the other factors.
Right.
So it'll just do what your wind drift is, and it'll tell you. You can go on the scale and increase the miles per hour for wind at a 90 or a 270 wind, so straight left or straight right, and you can basically do that until so for mills, for that gun, I'll go 600 yards and see at what intensity of wind will my wind hold be the point value of that yardage. So 600 yards, at what wind speed is my wind hold 0.6 mils? And then that's my gun number. So I know, for that gun, it's a 10-mile-an-hour gun, which is, I said, it's a 153 A-tip at 3,000 feet a second. So it's got a really good BC, going really fast, so the wind doesn't affect it as much. My competition gun is a 6-mile-an-hour gun. So,
okay. And
that'll be different with your density altitude. So if you're up hunting at 6,500 feet and it's 70 degrees, your density altitude, the air is less dense up there, so your bullet's going to be more efficient. So your gun number is going to be a little bit higher than, I got a match this weekend in just outside of Spokane. It's like 1,700 feet elevation. So that's going to decrease my gun number because the air is more dense. So I do it for different density altitudes. But so I know that gun, every 10 miles an hour, basically whatever yardage I'm at. So if it's 500 yards, my wind hold is going to be 5/10 of wind for every 10 miles an hour. So if it's 15-mile-an-hour wind, 500 yards, I know my base gun number is 0.5, and then I just add half of that for another 5 miles an hour.
Yep.
So you can do that, and you can do, your wind vector is going to change your value of the wind hold and stuff. So I do a lot of that just on the fly. But if you have the time and you wanted to do it on your app to not
to really
do an educated guess, you can do it that way.
One of the, I think Dennis, you went through the class too. Mike Perkins, his long range shooting class. One of the things that he taught us during that class, which to me is super simple and it's just always stuck with me for wind. It's probably not as accurate, but he basically said, okay, let's say you got a 600-yard shot and it's 10-mile-an-hour wind, full value. You just literally would take the 6 from the 600, times it by the 10, gives you 60, divide it by 20. 20 is a constant. He said just think of 20 as always what your bullet value is. And that gives you a 3 MOA hold on wind at 600.
Okay.
And when you start to plug that into these formulas, all these calculators, it's pretty dang close.
Yeah. It sounds like a lot of math, though.
I don't know. Maybe.
You can tell how Joe's brain works.
So that wind gun number stuff that I was just talking about is a mill thing, but you can do it for MOA. So what I'll do, and it usually ends up a higher number for wind value for the same gun, just based on the way I do this formula, I guess. But I had that for mills. So Chris Wade talks a lot about it. He does rifle craft stuff, big competition shooter. And then I was like, how do I translate that to MOA? And so I started messing with the stuff just to get an MOA value. And so what you can do is figure out at what speed of wind will your wind hold be half of your yardage value. So 600 yards, at what wind value will your MOA hold be 3 MOA? Mm-hmm. 500 yards, 2.5 MOA. And so it'll end up probably being 12, 13 miles an hour. I mean, your 7 PRC is probably going to be really similar to that, my rifle. So you'll probably be in that 12 mile an hour range.
Right.
And so then that way, if it's 700 yards, you're at 3.5 MOA, so it's just a quick way to go for every 12, or if it's only 6 miles an hour, then you just take a quarter of it instead of a half of it. For me, that's a lot easier to do quickly than that times that 20%, like just to do that. So it's easy to do on some of these applications on your phone, just to figure that out. And then I'll write that on my data cards that I carry in my bino harness and stuff for everything. That way I know. Because for each, like I said, each elevation, each gun, I got a bunch of different guns, different bullet combinations. It's a little bit different, but I'll do that with all of them.
Okay. When you are out there, maybe you're going to go there, but it's something that I'm really interested in, shooting position. And do you leverage your hunting partner while you're out there? Meaning, if you're doing a shot where you've got a sitting position, would you actually leverage your hunting partner to maybe put his hands in your back or his knees in your back to stabilize you?
I never have. I would personally rather build a position myself that I can be stable in, and then have him be on the glass to spot impacts and give me a correction if I need to.
Okay.
Shooting these intramural hunter matches, I shoot them as a team with my buddy Gus, and we've found that works really well. I'm usually the first shooter, get a base wind call. He's watching directly behind me if he can on the glass, because you can see the trace, and then it's easier to see impacts. As soon as you start getting off left or right, it starts being hard to tell if you were low or left or right or high, just because you can't really see the trace. And by the time that bullet splashes behind the target, it makes it look like it's a little different spot than if you watch it, like the trace of it. So building positions is something I generally try to do before I take the shot, right? Like when we get sitting glassing and everything. And I've ran into this a couple times where it's bit me in the butt where I haven't built that position, missed a shot at a buck because of it, because I just had my gun sit next to me, cover still on it and everything, and then he popped out, and I was like, oh, now I got to get my gun out, build this position on the tripod. I got to lower my tripod. So if I'm by myself, I take two tripods. I'll have the gun set up on one, and I'll be glassing on another.
Okay.
Because I try to get video footage of it through my binos or just to be able to look back on it if I hit or missed, or if I can't. Shooting some of these big magnums off a tripod, it'll buck you out of it real quick, and so you might not be able to see your impacts if you're on a elevated position or with a big magnum, especially suppressed. So, but I've never tried that, having somebody
help you
up against me. I would hesitate to that, just because then you're dealing with their movement on top of your movement.
Something you got to practice for sure.
Yeah. And just to see, that's one thing, you could try that at the range and see how stable you can get. That's why I really started shooting off of tripods, is because that bear that we saw down in that one draw that popped out below, that I was trying to shoot off of those shooting sticks, and just could not get stable enough. And that was the first time I tried that shooting position, was on this nasty downhill with the bear walking underneath me, and that wobble zone was just way too much. I was like, all right, I need to figure out a better way to do this.
Yeah.
So.
How many animals since you switched do you think you've killed without that tripod?
one. I think I shot that
Prone?
fall bear prone.
Yeah.
I try to find glass and spots and everything that lends me to a good shooting position.
Right.
Whether that's, if I can get my tripod down and get in a good spot, or if I could get prone, like I try to. I mean, that long bipod that I use, you could really, lengthen it out and get in a lot of shooting positions with that. And using a tripod leg as a rear support helps a lot too. So with these bigger tripod or bipods, you can lay them out and almost sit seated and have a tripod leg coming in at an angle from your right. You buttstock in here, you reach around, you grab that tripod leg, and that buttstock will sit right there, and you can use your hand and squeeze and go up and down that tripod leg to get your elevation and everything, and that's a super stable spot to shoot. If you have, a buddy there with a tripod that you can use, or you're,
I think all of these things take a lot of practice, right?
Yeah,
You got to do it before the hunt.
Yeah,
to get familiar with your gear. Because I know Dennis and I, we talk about shooting off the packs, right? Because you've got those different slots that you can actually lay the gun on, or you can flip the pack up and lay it up on the pack. But if you don't practice it,
Right.
Yeah,
it just
and that was
is
the
awkward.
thing, is that bear, that was the first time that I actually tried to shoot off of that. It's the Wiser Precision quick sticks on
Trekking poles.
Trekking poles, and it was sounded like a good idea at the time, and then I got into that position and I just could not get stable.
Yeah.
So,
Well, talk to me a little bit about how you set all your rifles up very similar that way, so you can shoot everything off of a tripod.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I just the stability, and I'll carry a heavier tripod just to have that added stability. There's gives and takes, right? Like I got a 13-pound rifle and I carry a heavier tripod, and Chase was saying earlier, like, oh my gosh, you're going to be 17 pounds with just the tripod and the rifle. And it's like, yeah, that's
Literally.
But, and I build my rifles to shoot, not to carry. Aaron Davison says it great at Gunworks, like, build a rifle to shoot, not to carry. Like, its job is not to carry well. Its job is to shoot well.
Yeah.
For you to be able to shoot it well and be able to kill that thing, because other than that, you're just a through hiker that's hiking in the woods, right? That's the end goal, is to go out there and kill something. And so I build a gun that's on the heavier side of things, because I know an extra couple pounds, I could lose a couple pounds off my butt before I could lose 2 pounds off of a rifle. Like, that 2 pounds on a rifle makes a huge difference on the shootability of it.
Well, talk to me a little bit about the Arca plate and stuff that you're doing, something that listeners can do, because that's really can be a relatively easy adjustment that I think makes a giant difference. And correct me if you feel differently.
No, you can get clamps that if you didn't want to modify your rifle, you can get a clamp, but that's not nearly as secure.
Right.
Those Arca plates that are bolted into the stock of your rifle and then clip into the Arca plate on your tripod head just locks things in super stable. You can do, heavy bags, but you really have to get a heavy filled bag, rear bag, or a shooting bag, like a Armageddon Gear Game Changer, to get the stability that you can clipped in. But I'll put usually Salmon River Solutions rails on the bottom of them. They have some that are just Arca rails, or they have pick rails on the front and Arca on the back section. That way you can mount a bipod to the front and still be able to clip into your tripod. But having that ability to quickly clip that in, and you got to have a tripod that's set up for that too. Like we talked earlier about that little tiny tripod that you shot off at that time. That's not meant for that.
Nope.
So and nowadays tripods have gone so far just in that 6-7 years since that hunt, where you can get a lightweight tripod that's still got the weight capacity and the head strength to hold those rifles up, even a 13-pound rifle like I carry. So
Okay. So we end every show with some rapid fire, but before we get to that, give me one piece of advice for hunters that are trying to improve their shooting for hunting type scenarios.
Shoot. I mean, that's really, guys will get into the weeds with their gear and, oh man, I got to buy. When I got started in it was, everybody used to say, you got to spend twice on the optic that you spent on the rifle. Yeah, probably back then you might have had to do that just to get something that was reliable enough to track and to return to zero and hold zero. But anymore nowadays, you can get a really nice scope that'll hold, zero, track, or turn to zero without spending thousands of dollars. So I wouldn't spend as much on the gun and like, say if you got a budget, you're like, hey, I can only spend $2,000. There's a lot of good factory rifles out there that are going to be in that $600 to $1,000, and then you can buy a rifle scope. Like, a lot of guys don't like me for saying it, but I have a bunch of the Arkin scopes. They're EPL4. You can get online right now for $350, I think, out the door. And that's a great scope. It's tracked really well. It's held zero. It's returned to zero. It's been a great scope for me for that price. Like, that's you used to be able to get like a little Tasco 3-9 for that price years ago, and so I'd spend that kind of money there, and then spend the rest on ammo, and try to buy as much. Like, for your hunt last year, I was trying to get you to get the same lot of ammo, because with factory ammo, the variance in lot to lot can be huge. So I'd buy as much ammo as you could of the same lot, and then you might have to figure out what your gun likes first, and then maybe buy a box of this, box of that. But when you figure out what your gun likes, go buy as much of that ammo as you can of the same lot, and then shoot and get that trigger time, because you're going to figure out pretty quick if you're building bad positions when you're shooting, or your wind calls, stuff like that. That'll come a lot from shooting a lot. But you can get stuff. There's some dry fire trainers that have a lens that goes on the front of your optic that basically lets you adjust your parallax down to like 12 feet. And then they have pictures that you have little targets on these pieces of paper. And you could build positions and look at that and do dry fire on those little tiny targets on there and figure out what my wobble's way off of this and everything. So those are fairly inexpensive. You can get into something like that for $100, but...
Okay. So time, that's your biggest piece of advice. Just get trigger time.
It's hard, and I really like the gunwork side of things, but 1,000 yards out of a box, the gun might be able to, but always the weak link is going to be the shooter.
Right.
Anymore with the machining stuff, like, guns are going to shoot really well, but the shooter's the one that's going to be the...
Yeah. Well, it's mid-June of 2025 right now. How many rounds do you think you've put down range this year?
I got 200 just on that Magnum rifle that I built a couple months ago. So that, and then my competition rifle, I shoot a lot. So I'm probably a couple thousand rounds in already this year.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
It's a lot of shooting to do.
Yeah. Well, I think we all do.
Anymore too, like, even you guys is with your Magnum rifles, you can go out and shoot some of these matches. Like the NRL Hunter, they have a skills division. You don't have to meet power factor. You don't have to meet the weight. You don't have to do all that stuff. And then you can watch people shoot, figure out where the targets are, because it can be tough to try to find and range these targets and engage them within the allotted amount of time. But if you just want to work on building positions and shooting in these winds at these little targets and these kind of hunting situations, these skills division, you can watch shooters shoot in front of you, figure out where the targets are, get all that range, so then by the time you're up, you just work on building your position, getting your wind call, and shooting. Right. And guys, there's a guy every match that I've gone to so far that shoots his 300 Win Mag. There's guys that are shooting 7 mags and stuff like that, and they're just out there. I mean, they're top loading, their old hunting rifle and shooting these matches, and it's cheaper too. I think it's only $150 for that, but you get probably 80 rounds down. I mean, it can be expensive with a hunting rifle, but
right. Trigger time pays off when you get on the mountain. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Dennis, got some rapid fire for us?
This should be fun. Okay, so Rodger, real quick, what we do is we do rapid fire. I'm going to give you 2 words. It'll be, like black or white, and you just answer as quick as you can.
Okay.
We might go all over the place. We might stick to more hunting. But you ready? We'll give you about 6 or 7 of them.
Okay.
Let's go. I did this one last time, and I thought it went well. But I'm going to switch it up just a little bit.
Okay.
Chocolate or strawberry?
Chocolate. I got a sweet tooth.
Okay. Floor or floorless?
floor. Oh my gosh, floor.
Amen.
I will carry a floor with a stove. I will carry
This
a
is
floor with
rapid
everything.
fire.
Sorry.
Don't let him get down this rabbit hole because
Yeah.
we'll be 3 hours of podcasting if he's talking
Filter
about
or SteriPen?
I've never used a SteriPen, so filter.
Country or hip hop?
Country.
Okay. Black or white or gray? Black, white, or gray?
Just as a color or
No, as a life decision maker.
gray?
Good one.
There's
Okay.
always room for the gray.
Okay. Metallica or AC/DC?
Metallica. Enter Sandman. That was my walkout song during baseball.
Was it?
Yeah.
No
You
way.
look like a Metallica guy.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Rodger Holscher, thanks for coming on the Mountain Dude
Thank
podcast.
you guys for having me, man. This
Yeah.
is great.
Thanks,
Appreciate
buddy.
you, man. Everybody, remember to hit the like and subscribe button. Share the podcast with your friends because it makes a big difference. And leave a 5-star review. Thanks, brother.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Until next time, keep your eyes on the summit. This is the Mountain Dude Podcast, signing off.